Hey, what's up, everyone? It is BRAP. It is Wednesday, and look, we've made it halfway through the week. Happy Hump Day, everyone! And yeah, look, this is probably going to be a shorter show than we typically have. We typically run about 2 hours. This may be maybe an hour show, and I'm not sure if the rest of the panel is going to be joining me tonight. But if they do, the more the merrier. It'd be great. And yeah. Do me a quick favor. I'm going to drop a link in the live chat here. Please let me, please retweet the link. Let everyone know that we're live. So, look, want to give a big thank you to everyone watching the show live right now, and those who are going to watch it later on. Really appreciate it, as always. And then also, to all those who've subscribed, really appreciate it as well. There'd be no BRAP without each and every one of you. So, thank you again. I appreciate it. But, yeah, let's get into some gaming-related news. We're going to talk about something that I tweeted about. And this kind of goes back to just my experience over the last, I've been gaming for, about 40 years or so. And I started gaming at a young age. I'm only 46, but I was kind of thinking about just my time in gaming over the last 40 odd years and how, I owned consoles that weren't the top selling console or the most popular console. And so I wanted to talk about that because it kind of resonates. It resonates with me with regards to, I think, kind of what I see from the Xbox community, the diehard Xbox community, I should say. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And that's where this title of Xbox fans need to do this now. And then we're going to talk about PlayStation 5 sales surging in Europe. Hey, if you listen to some of the fanboy Xbox pundits out there, they would have told you that with the price increase that Sony was going to lose certain markets in Europe and that it was just going to give Xbox the opportunity to outsell PlayStation. And look, let me just say something real quick. There has been a cheaper option in multiple markets with the existing with the Series S being out there in the wild. And so even then, people are going to go out and buy what they buy. They're going to buy what they want. And look, PlayStation just has a tremendous brand power. I mean, they're, if you think about brands, they are one of the more recognized brands globally. And people want PlayStation consoles. We're seeing this now. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, the increase year over year in the European market. And then kind of talk about Hogwarts Legacy. We're going to talk about that a little bit. And then some other gaming related news. But let's talk about Hogwarts Legacy because it looks like the game is off to a pretty significant start right now. I mean, I think that it's interesting. I was watching Pat McAfee, and he had Tyler Haneke, who he's not signed with the Washington Commanders. For those who don't know, I'm a Washington Commanders fan and cannot wait for the Commanders to be sold because Dan Snyder has totally ruined that franchise. Like it's crazy. He ruined the franchise and got rich doing so. He's going to cash out making like $5 billion off this deal, which is insane. But I get this. I get the sense that, and if you look at the Metacritic reviews for Hogwarts Legacy, it's about 84 Metacritic right now for PlayStation 5. The game was also released on PC. It's also Metacritic 84% as well, or 84. And so, I'm sorry, hold on just a sec here. So the game, there's a lot of controversy. We talked about it last week, and look, I mean, the game, there was a lot of I forget how many active users. I'm trying to pull this information up here. Let's see here. So Hogwarts Legacy launch sales break 22-year-old sales break a 22-year-old record, demolishes Elden Ring. So this is these are some of the titles here. These are some of the titles here that, or some of the headlines from the media about Hogwarts Legacy. So Hogwarts Legacy is a massive sales success so far, beating a launch sales record previously set by the Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone video game adaptation, considerably outpacing Elden Ring's first week sales. And you think about how Elden Ring just was a juggernaut last year. If you look at what that game did. I mean, Hogwarts Legacy physical sales, and again, this is I'm quoting UK numbers here. Hogwarts Legacy physical sales the first week in the UK are 80% higher than Elden Ring, which is incredibly impressive when considering just how big a deal Elden Ring was. So this is according to Gaming Rant. So, yeah, I mean, this game is just. It looks like this game is going to be huge. It's going to be a huge hit, and. It was a top fourth best-selling game on Steam. Early access of Hogwarts Legacy broke records for most streams of a single game with 1.28 million concurrent players. I'm sorry, that's not correct. Most streams of a single game with 1.28 million concurrents. Those are streams. On Hogwarts Legacy peaked at 879,308 players on Steam Sunday, behind only Cyberpunk for the most concurrents for a single-player game, also behind Elden Ring if you consider what most single-player games do. So again, I mean, this is the juggernaut of the brand name or the brand of anything associated with Harry Potter, and despite some of the anger of this game is just. This game is just doing very well. Yeah, and Sergeant, you're right. This is all before the PS4, Xbox One releases. This is thank you, Next Level Gaming Podcast. This is again, this is kind of what I thought was going to happen. I don't look. If somebody doesn't want to play this game, I for the things that J.K. Rowling said, I'm perfectly okay with that. I don't take issue with it, but I think outside of that, this game is going to be, I think, just a massive sales success. And, in hindsight, Sony was very smart. Sony was very smart just having, getting the marketing rights to this. So Just Wait says, so having lots of map icons and hand-holding tutorials is cool again. I don't know what you're referring to, Just Wait. If you could kind of elaborate what you mean by that. I don't know what that means, but or if you're referring to a specific review. Oh, because Horizon Forbidden West got ripped for it. I mean, I don't recall reviews of Horizon Forbidden West getting ripped for it. But again, you got to remember something. Just wait. These things exist on a spectrum. If the hand-holding map icons were something that impacted the experience in the game, then yeah, I mean, those things, I could see people dinging a game for that. But if they're not impactful, they don't take away from the immersion of the game, then so be it. I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I hate whataboutisms, by the way. I just don't care. Like, I don't care if Horizon Forbidden West got ripped for it. I don't think it's a big deal. It's just my opinion. But anyhow, I think this game just to be a massive success. I mean, so I heard Tyler Heineke talking about this on the Pat McAfee show. He's he's a free agent now, but he was the backup and starting quarterback for the Washington Commanders. And he talked about, they were asking, like, what are you doing in the offseason right now, Tyler? And he was like, hey, I'm playing Hogwarts Legacy. I'm like, wow. And he said he spent about 12 hours the last 2 days playing. And as I'm having the TV on, I'm seeing Hogwarts Legacy, PlayStation exclusive Quest commercial playing in the background here. And again, like, this is, I mean, in hindsight, this is probably going to move some PlayStation units, or some units for PlayStation 5 units, because the game is being heavily marketed right now. I'm seeing a lot of, and I don't know, about, I can't speak for everyone else's optics, but when I turn on the TV, I'm seeing a lot of Hogwarts Legacy commercials associated with PlayStation 5. And if you didn't know any better, you would assume that game is solely associated with the PlayStation 5. So I think it's going to be one of those things that is going to move some units for PlayStation 5. And again, I think this game's going to be just a huge, huge success. I think by the end of the year, this is probably one of the top selling games of 2023. So, and I gotta say, the developer behind this game, not a developer that I would have thought that I had much faith in per se, but they put out a pretty solid game. And I've seen this game. I've seen a lot of people play this game on the timeline. Some of the chatter that I've seen on Twitter and social media about this game really kind of reminds me, kind of similar to what we saw with Elden Ring. So, again, I think it's going to be a pretty big success. So, all right, let's all right, there was an article that actually came out. Hold on a sec here. How to pull this article back up here. There's an article that came out about 2 days ago that Sony wants to rent NFTs to players and stream spectators. So this is according to Gamer Rant. Sony I can't even talk today. Sony Interactive Entertainment wants to rent non-fungible tokens or NFTs. So again, they want to rent NFTs to players and stream spectators. And this is according to a patent by Sony that suggests the company may introduce NFTs into the PlayStation ecosystem on not just PlayStation 5 but PlayStation 4 in the near future. So I did see some. Look, the NFTs have kind of been a controversial thing, with gamers. Look, honestly, I really don't have anything. Hey, what's up, Worry? Where it says I enjoy walnuts. Look. I saw some people getting upset, like, "Oh, I can't believe Sony's going to have rentable NFTs." I'm like, I don't look. I could see, like, if someone says, like, "Hey, I don't care for that," that's fine. But as long as it's not something that's forced or there's some kind of, I don't know, some kind of like reward or impact to an actual game that you're playing as a result to renting or buying an NFT, I don't care. I just don't. But I thought it's interesting that they're thinking about renting NFTs as opposed to having people buy them and then, the idea of maybe selling them because they're unique. I don't know. So that's interesting. Well, Warrior says that Microsoft has an entire rentable ecosystem. Oh man. Yeah, you were referring to Game Pass. There was articles out there this week. I think it was this past week that, according to Microsoft's some documents to the CMA, that Microsoft admitted that Game Pass does cannibalize sales of video games. I believe within 12 months after the release of games, and so that kind of started the chatter of, Game Pass cannibalizing game sales, but. Look, the whole Game Pass thing's interesting. Like we've talked a lot about Game Pass on this show. Look, I think it's a tremendous value proposition for people who want access to a large library of games. I also think that it's not something that's going to appeal to everyone. It's just not. The DFC Intelligence actually posted. There was a report actually on something by industry analyst DFC Intelligence, and let me pull this up real quick since we're talking about it. And I've been following DFC Intelligence for 20-something years. I remember when they would talk about predictions with the original X launch of the Xbox. But according to industry market research firm DFC Intelligence, they say that Microsoft's Xbox Game Pass doesn't appear to be a sustainable long-term business model. And what they're saying is that they're saying that the problem with Game Pass is that Microsoft is giving away too much content in order to generate its revenue. Meanwhile, although not nearly as good as Xbox Game Pass and PlayStation Plus, Nintendo appears to have found a sweet spot with Switch Online when it comes to offering decent value for consumers. Now, we do know that according to Microsoft, Game Pass is profitable now. We don't know how profitable it is, but according to them, it's profitable. And then I would be interested to know what the I think it's the profitability net ratio. I think it's what it's called. I was hoping. I don't know if Falky's listening right now, but it's basically how much a company spends to generate profitability. So if they're spending $10 million and getting $12 million back, or if they're spending $10 million to generate $12 million of revenue and they're only getting $2 million in profitability, that's not a good ratio. But the great David Falky can kind of elaborate on that. I don't know if he's in the live chat, but and I do forget what that's called. It's a ratio of some sorts, and I could post it later on in the comment section. Net profit, but it's net profit something else ratio or something. It's basically the money that you spend to generate profit. So anyhow, so they're saying the problem with Game Pass is that they're saying that comparing subscriber numbers is not necessarily fair because the service have significantly different prices. And they go on to say, however, what is clear is how well Nintendo's subscription service works as an enhancement to the overall business model of selling hardware and software. In contrast, Game Pass appears to be trying to be its own end, where Xbox hardware sales are not important. Now, I get that perspective. Now, we also know that Microsoft's saying that, hey, you know what, like Game Pass accounts for 15% of our business in gaming, and we're still in the business of selling Xbox hardware. Although I do think Microsoft needs to, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, I think they got to release some content that really moves the needles. Why? Well, I think that Hi-Fi Rush, great stealth drop, great game. It's being reviewed very well. That's not a game that's really going to move the needle for the platform. So they go on to say, when one does the math, Game Pass is making probably 3 times the revenue Nintendo Switch Online currently generates, and probably getting closer to matching PlayStation Plus revenue because it's a higher priced. However, Microsoft is giving away a lot to generate that revenue. It does not appear to be a sustainable long-term business model. Again, I would say this one thing. Whether it's not, here's the thing with sustainability for Microsoft, like they can basically, they can play the long game here if they want. So I do want to welcome Game Logic to the panel here. What's up, Game Logic?
What's BRAP? How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well. It's funny, man. Like I started the show. I was like, the show's probably gonna be an hour. I'm kind of rushing through topics here because I got to be honest with you, Game Logic. I want to get some gaming in tonight, man. You said to me like you were gonna play Call of Duty, and I was thinking about the what was the map that we played the other night after playing some Halo Infinite? I forget the map with the U.S. Mexican border. I forget the name of that map.
I believe that's the Santa Seneca border crossing.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so we played that, and I did okay. Positive KDA or KDR. Hey, I played one game. I was like, okay, I'm out. But yeah. So I'm reading the article from about DFC Intelligence commentary on Xbox Game Pass, and I think I shared that with you, Hamp, or Game Logic, right? I think we talked about this.
Yep. Yeah, I read the article.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts, sir? I'll kick it over to you. What are your thoughts on what DFC Intelligence has to say here about Game Pass?
I think I mentioned them to you, and there's potentially parts of the article that I missed. I don't think so. I just, the article didn't seem to me to have any quantitative basis or any kind of investment or financial information or metrics that we weren't aware of. It seemed like a lot of a qualitative analysis based off of the subjective anecdotes that they've been exposed to. So I don't necessarily mean that to say that I thought that the analysis was wrong. It just didn't pop on my radar as anything that any of us couldn't have figured out on our own. I tend to disagree with it because of that, because it doesn't have any math to support its case. And kind of as you mentioned, right, this whole notion of sustainability, which has become kind of a cheerleading soundbite that detractors of Game Pass tend to cling on to, again, it's highly subjective based on the company that's doing it. As we've mentioned, the big five tech companies, obviously, as they have done numerous times before, have the financial and capital base to engage in loss leader strategies, and stick with something for a very long time. And not even just necessarily the big five. That's also just an investment decision. Rainbow's, we've talked about specific titles, right? Rainbow Six Siege was
Yeah,
a
yeah,
long game to get it to a point
yeah.
where it was really successful. Lots of games have come out, particularly that are games as a service, that a company just decided to dump a lot of money and effort behind them and stick with them, and eventually they kind of climb the ladder and are now sitting kind of on top of the games as a service heap. So, again, kind of like when Sean Layden mentioned it the first time, certainly a subscription model is not sustainable when you have a smaller financial and capital basis, and you can't engage in those loss leader strategies. But obviously, one would argue that Amazon, has lots of sustainable models where it may have to dump lots of money behind something. I would challenge somebody to show me the math where they would say that Amazon doesn't have to put more into making Amazon Prime run than it gets out of Amazon Prime as a standalone P&L center, right? You've got music, movies, 2-day shipping, all sorts of other benefits in Amazon Prime Kids, right? But obviously, what Amazon gets out of that is the knock-on effects of people getting into the store, just like the doorbuster deals that we've talked about, and then people buy other stuff, and that drives revenue. So, I kind of feel like the sustainability argument is a kind of worn tread that no longer needs any more credence until somebody puts some numbers behind it.
Yeah. And Albert G, we're not trying to spin anything. We're just having a discussion. Like, I know you say Xbox doesn't show their numbers. Look, all I know is that Microsoft's told me it's profitable. That's all I know, and that's all I can speak to. I mean, we're not trying to spin anything, anything like that. I think I get the sense that kind of it just, and I'll read kind of the last paragraph here for what DFC Intelligence is saying. They say the bottom line is that game subscription services seem to work as a value add proposition. Nintendo has shown that with Nintendo has shown that with Nintendo Switch Online, there are tens of millions of users that will pay $60 for a game and a cheap, mediocre online service. Taking it to the level of Game Pass requires not only significantly more expenditure, but requires giving up a large established revenue stream. I think my interpretation is that they're basically saying, look, you're cannibalizing your $60, $70 sales for subscriptions. Yeah, to an extent, but they're still selling those games. Microsoft, you can still buy those games if you're not subscribed to Game Pass. So I get the sense that they're saying, like, okay, if the way Nintendo's kind of approaches with getting the juice out of the $60 games, kind of squeezing as many pennies as they can out of those $60 titles, and then having this service that allows you to add additional content or additional features or additional things to those games that you already bought. And they're saying the combination of the two is a nice complement. I think that's kind of, again, they're basically comparing and contrasting like what Nintendo's doing versus what Microsoft's doing. But my interpretation of that, again, is that they are basically saying, look, the way Nintendo has it set up is just kind of a nice complement, and it's going to make them more money, potentially, than maybe what Game Pass is doing, because Game Pass is giving so much away. They're giving away the house. But again, to the point of them saying, well, because they're giving away the house, it may not be something that's sustainable long term. But again, we're talking about the $1 trillion company that's backing this too. So I don't know if sustainability is even in the conversation.
We go back to the fact that the gaming revenue is 4% of Microsoft's total portfolio. That's what they're getting out of it. I don't think that they're putting some ginormous amount into it, significantly greater than that. Nintendo is a significantly different business model, right, in terms of the properties that it owns. When we talk about Nintendo selling a game, let's remember that Nintendo is, first of all, selling a console that has, millions of dollars less of R&D behind it than a current modern generation console, so that upfront loss on fielding a console generation is less. Let's also talk about the fact that when Nintendo sells something out of its portfolio, its first-party games, that very many of those titles are games that have not necessarily been that have a ton of reuse behind them, right? Either from a story script base, or a code base, right? So lots of their titles that they sell are code lifts that are the same game that was originally sold, but have had parts of it rewritten. And granted, sometimes a total rewrite. That's not really quite the same portfolio model that Microsoft is oriented around, and definitely not the same portfolio model at scale that PlayStation is oriented around. And you have a very different consumer base. We talked about this on my show the other night, and we have the fact that since Nintendo has started providing digital online services and a digital storefront, that in every generation it has sold its consumers, of which I am one, digital copies of legacy games. And when the platform has shifted, you have not necessarily been guaranteed access to those games on the new hardware. The only way to retain access to those games is to retain your old hardware. And the only way to get access to them on the new hardware often is to buy them again. So the value proposition that Nintendo has offered its customers in terms of digital online access via its online service and subscription service is significantly different than Game Pass, in my opinion.
Yeah. I remember you guys were talking about on your show about the kind of like Nintendo's behavior with its online. I believe that was the topic you guys were talking about this past, was it Monday? Sunday? Monday.
Yeah. We've talked to, it's come up a couple times probably in the last, 3 or 4 weeks, but yeah.
Okay. Well, Hamp, we're gonna move along here because, like I said, I do really want to do some gaming, man. I share this with you. Like, part of my issue with doing BRAP more recently is like I'm just in this mode right now, man, where I just want to get on and play some typically Halo Infinite. But I was thinking about COD today, and I was thinking about how you were kind of tinkering out with different loadouts. And I'm like, man, that's the thing that's kind of missing from Halo Infinite, that tinkering, of weapon loadouts. But anyhow, all right. So we do have some numbers regarding game spending in the U.S. Matt Piscatella dropped some information this week about U.S. consumer spending in games for the month of January. Now, Hamp, or should I call you Hamp or Game Logic? I always forget. Either or.
You can go ahead and call me Game Logic. I'm specifically on that as a matter of vengeance. I almost when I asked you tonight,
okay.
When I asked you tonight if there was a podcast, because I've been stalking you guys offline from Twitter since I'm not on Twitter, and I saw that there was, and I almost activated my sleeper cell Twitter account, my burner account that I've got on standby.
Your burner account
to put the Stephen Amell getting suited up in the Green Arrow suit. I was heading into the podcast, but no, you can go with Game Logic.
Yeah, Game Logic, the artist formerly known as Hamp, but now Game Logic. Yeah, so Hamp, I was told that the U.S. is in a recession. I got to rub that in, by the way, because U.S. consumer spending was up 3% for January, the month of January, which was, we talked about this earlier, surprised me. But speaking of gaming, U.S. consumer spending on games reached $4.3 billion for the month of January. It's a 5% decline year over year. Again, this is according to NPD. So NPD also said that software comprised most of the month's revenue, 88%, with game content reaching $3.79 billion again for the month of January. So consumer spending for the month on hardware is flat year over year at $393 million. Amongst console sales, Sony's PlayStation 5 was the top selling platform for both units and dollars. I mean, Hamp, we've talked about this, I feel like, a lot with PlayStation 5. Look, they just needed to get consoles on retail shelves. And now they're doing that. Because you got to remember at one point, Game Logic, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the PlayStation 5 around launch was actually outpacing the PlayStation 4, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to go back and look at that. But if I remember correctly, I think that was actually a thing before the pandemic hit, and then the impact of supply chain. But and then also Nintendo Switch was second across the same category in terms of consoles. So the Nintendo Switch is just, I mean, like how many more of these things can they sell? I mean, how many do we? Game Launch, how many Switch units has Nintendo sold? Do you know? At least in the U.S.
I thought it was like 120 million. I thought.
That's insane, man. And the console is, well, how old is it? 5 years old?
Going on 6 years old.
6 years. Okay. 6 years. Okay. All right. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 was number one. I think for January, no surprise there. And I gotta say, Hamp, I'm actually glad to see Dead Space, the remake, reach second for the month of January. I big fan of the original, really enjoying the remake. I think it's great. I think they did an awesome job just doing the remake of this game, and I hope that I was hoping this game would do well because the sequel to Dead Space 2, is actually really good too. I think Dead Space 2 is a little more scarier than Dead Space 1. So I'm hoping that Dead Space 2 gets green light based on the performance of the Dead Space remake. So Elden Ring is at number 6. So Elden Ring still churning out sales. Fire Emblem Engage, which was a new release, debuted at number 5. Also, I should just, mention it. Third was Madden NFL 23. Fourth, FIFA 23. Forspoken debuted at number 7. And Game Logic, there was some conversation around the debut of or the performance of Forspoken, debuting at or making it to number 7 on the NPD list for the month of January. And I know that Jeff Grubb mentioned that he thought it was a rough launch to this game, coming at number 7. It is a PlayStation 5 timed exclusive, but I don't know. I don't know if I would say rough, considering that the game launched at the last week of January, so it was 6 days to basically chart on NPD, and it came in at number 7. I mean, I don't think that's too shabby. What are your thoughts, Ham, or Game Logic?
Yeah, can you what games were after that behind Forspoken?
All right, so after Forspoken, God of War Ragnarok, One Piece Odyssey, which is new. The only other new game title the other two new game titles that charted higher on NPD were Dead Space, which again is on multiple platforms and on PC. Fire Emblem Engage, which is it's a Nintendo Switch, it's pretty impressive. And then Forspoken at number 7, and then One Piece Odyssey debuted at number 9, which is a new release. So the other games after that are Pokemon Scarlet Violet, and then The Last of Us Part 1. So I want to talk about this too, because we see The Last of Us Part 1, and remember all the hubbub about the remake. Who asked for that? And here we are. The show is released, and it was 36 on NPD for the month of December. It is now at 11 for the month of January. So,
so I think the thing to ask, and look, I have the utmost respect for Jeff Grubb. He gave me a shot to write a little bit for Venture Beat. So I throw no shade at Jeff Grubb, but I would say at the notion that Forspoken encountered a sales problem, and we saw the same thing with Gotham Knights, which actually tracked NPD for the year for 2022. That for a game that came out in the last sales week of October of 2022, and so only had a 2-month run, 8, 9, maybe 10 weeks to climb the ladder as much as it did, and wound up being like the top 15th game sold in 2022. And then, as you mentioned, right, we saw the same thing with The Last of Us remastered. And so the question, to ask, that person or anybody who's been throwing shade at Forspoken, as I saw a lot of the console war nonsense about Forspoken versus High on Life, and those games essentially were reviewed with equal numbers, basically, as far as their Metacritic score goes. So basically, have the same kind of critical take on them. I would say, do you think maybe Bandai Namco or Nintendo would have liked One Piece Odyssey or Pokemon to have sold at number 7 on NPD? Do you think Bandai Namco or Electronic Arts would have liked Forspoken to have not taken as much of a chunk out of the sales wedge for the month of January and had those sales numbers allocated to their titles? The answer to that is probably yes. Probably other people standing shoulder to shoulder with Forspoken in that month, or games that aren't even in the top 10, would have rather not have had Forspoken around, so that they could have gotten a piece of that cheddar. So the point of the story and the moral is, stop with all the wackadoodle console warring that you extrapolate into so-called market analysis, because you skew it and get it wrong. For people who take those console wars and then behave as if they're going to do market analysis because they understand what the market actually wants. As we always say, I think almost every single week, Twitter is at best 17% of the gaming market. That 17% is further factionalized around console wars, genre wars, all types of other nonsense. Stop reading nonsensical publications and way in the dark corners, gray markets, and back alleys of websites that publish mess, and actually look at data driven analysis that actually holds water.
Yeah, and I would throw in back alley podcasts too, by the way, to get your information. Don't do it.
Yep. Yeah, very true.
Yeah. So, and you're right. I mean, like, there's always a major disconnect between Twitter and what happens, in the market. And an example of that is when PlayStation increased the price of, or I say PlayStation, when Sony increased the price of PlayStation 5 in some of the European markets. People are saying, "Oh, Xbox is going to outsell because people are struggling to put food on the table, so the Xbox is the cheaper option. They're going to outsell PlayStation." And lo and behold, we have news now that the PlayStation 5 sales have jumped 200% across Europe year over year for last month. I mean, so again, I mean, this is if you were to believe some of the back alley podcasters that were up in arms about this price increase and saying, what about the kids? This is tone deaf. What about the kids? People are struggling to put the food on the table. I mean, you would have thought that the PlayStation was going to struggle because of these quote unquote cheaper options out there. And here we go, 200% increase year over year. I mean, I think that says something. And then if you compare the other consoles that the PlayStation 5 is competing against, Nintendo Switch sales were down 11% from January 2022 to January 23 of this year. Xbox Series X and S were actually down even more. They were down 32% year over year. And PlayStation 5 was at 200%, was up 200% year over year across Europe. So, and by the way, the PlayStation, again, I'm sorry, the Nintendo Switch numbers being down 11% and the Xbox X and S numbers being down 32% are also for Europe as well. Just want to mention that as well. So, but again, that's again another example of, had you listened to those podcasts or the people on Twitter, you would have thought, oh my gosh, PlayStation's in trouble. So
yeah, dare it be arrogant and egotistical of me to say, maybe go back and listen to the BRAP podcast the week that happened, and listen to the discussion about what happens when you raise prices on a product that is experiencing extreme scarcity in a market where there is extremely high demand, and how there are different buyers on the market competing for luxury products, and the discussion on price sensitivity. I think that's a good podcast to listen to get a lot of exposure to economic terms, which I think everyone's familiar with, but just in case people aren't, that's a good podcast to listen to I think hear a unemotional, quantitative, objective, tangible take and perspective on what was going to happen and what was going to be the outcome of the market, given those price increases. analysis that did not have a lot of console war fanboyism behind it. That I think maybe gives you a little more realistic perspective on how the market has unfolded than, as we said, both both Xbox aligned and PlayStation brand aligned podcasts would have given you given the goings on that particular week.
Yeah, and Rodimus says 200% increase from a year ago was when PS5 was struggling to get the console because of supply constraints. Yeah, I mean that's why we're seeing that. But that goes back to what we talked about a couple podcasts ago, Rodimus, where we talked about demand, how despite the $50 price increase and people saying the sky's falling with PlayStation in Europe, there was going to be this negative impact to PlayStation sales because there were cheaper options out in the marketplace. That doesn't seem to be the case. I mean, so obviously, we're seeing it now within PD. We're seeing that as Sony gets more PlayStation 5s out in the wild, they're going to continue to outsell. I would imagine, outsell the competition. I don't see them. And again, I could be wrong, Game Logic, but I think so long as inventory is they're able to meet the demands and get inventory on store shelves, I don't see them looking back at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of see the trend that we saw with the PlayStation 4. So it's gonna be interesting. We'll see. But hold on a sec here. Remember, Microsoft announced that their sales in North America was very strong. They sold better than Sony for 4 months. In Europe, Sony consoles are very dominant. Sony's always had. I do remember Microsoft announcing their sales in North America were very strong. They sold better than Sony for 4 months. They sold better than Sony because Sony could not get PlayStation 5s on retail shelves. That's why Xbox was able to outsell PlayStation 5 here in the U.S. And actually, that's something that Matt Piscatella talked about. And he basically said, "Look, I think Matt, I'm not exact quote, but Rodimus is saying so Xbox had 30% drop because they are now having supply constraints. Are they? Is that what led to the 30% drop?
I mean, my feeling on it is the supply constraint problem, as I said last year, right? The supply constraint problem is only relevant in terms of trying to project what's going to happen, right, to sales numbers in the future. As far as the accountability for the sales numbers in their addition to, right, the company's earnings base, I don't really care. I mean, Microsoft did think. Look, Apple has experienced supply constraints. Apple does things within its production pipeline and its suppliers to ride through those supply constraints to maintain its market position, both in the United States and globally. It is a thing to be managed. Microsoft did a successful job last year brokering deals with its suppliers to make sure that they, enough raw materials flow to the manufacturing plants and enough Xboxes flowed off the line. I said the same thing last year when PlayStation failed to sell a number of consoles. The supply constraint thing was an interesting anecdote, but at the end of the day, all that matters is that they didn't sell as many consoles. So I don't really care why. Why is a PlayStation problem? Why is a Sony problem? And why is a PlayStation problem and a Sony problem for a division that is critical to the financial health of Sony, whereas the Xbox division is not critical to the financial health of Microsoft? So all of the blamesmanship and the excusemanship is irrelevant to me. I think what is relevant is when we say, yeah, there was a dampening on sell-through because they couldn't get enough consoles on the shelf. That's relevant to say, once they do, we expect those sales numbers to increase. But as far as how those sales numbers contributed to the financial performance of those two companies, the causality behind it is of little interest. I think it's just a matter of, who appears to be doing well based on that sales health. BRAP, are you still there?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had you muted. I was talking. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, Game Logic?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You had me muted, or you had
No. I muted myself. Yeah, I muted myself because I was like sneezing. I had like a sneezing bout. But no, no, a great point, Game Logic. But no, GKN KO says at BRAP, I also have a hunch that Microsoft is holding back. Oh no, hold on. Let me go back to what you first said. Sony will always outsell Microsoft because Microsoft are now focusing on competing toe to toe in console sales with Sony. I don't necessarily agree with that. I would say then why are they even making consoles then? If they're not looking to, I mean, I guess unless you're saying that, because of what Phil Spencer's saying that he doesn't view Sony as a competitor, but look, I mean, they're in the console space, they're competitors. I don't agree with that. He says also about Microsoft is holding back heavy supplies in some regions to push their consoles when their bigger games launch for later this year. Maybe. I mean, what big games though? The only one that we know right now is, what's it called? Starfield. But Phil Spencer did say that to expect some supply constraints with Xbox consoles going through holiday of 2022 and early 2023 because of chip constraints. But I mean, again, this is anecdotal. I'm still seeing Series S consoles readily available on store shelves when I go to like Best Buy and Walmart in my area here, GameStop. I know Forte's mentioned that they get quite a bit of Series S consoles in. Series X is a little bit is a harder one to find of the Series consoles. So,
yeah, but I want to temper that a little bit because I see in the chat people running away. From my perspective, the fact that there's a console on a shelf isn't necessarily indicative of how the console is selling or not selling. I mean, and particularly when we don't know, right, we still to this date don't know what the balance is between manufacturing output of the Series S versus the Series X. So, I mean, those are good data points, but I worry when the chat says, well, they're not selling because I can go buy them off the store shelves. That may be an indicator, but I don't know that that's final ending fact. I mean, I understand GK knows position in that I think what Microsoft has said is that, and I think it's been a valid strategy, is that the common performance metrics that we normally look at in the games industry is not the focus that Microsoft is shifting to. Number of consoles sold is not their priority. Other things may not be their priority. And I've talked about how that is because entering this generation, actually at the tail end of last generation, they started a pivot that started them kind of changing what the battlefield looked like. And that made sense because I go back to, if you're going in to fight Mike Tyson, it would be dumb for you to stand toe-to-toe with Mike Tyson and fight within an arm's reach if you're a taller boxer with a longer arm. It makes sense to pivot and shift and fight wars that are most beneficial to you. Same thing that I've talked about with how IBM pivoted into enterprise when it started losing out on the consumer PC space, and other companies that have gone on to be financially healthy companies who have done some type of business pivot to focus on things that are their strengths. So all that I give credence to. But at the same time, right, the number of consoles sold is a matter of install base for an addressable market of consumers who are looking to buy physical and digital downloadable copies of games, and the Sony strategy right now is proving out to be one that allows them to sell more consoles. I think it's still a nod that Microsoft should get that at this point they don't appear to be getting outsold 2-1 like they were last console generation. So that does give some credence that they are doing some things better than they did last time around.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. They're not being outsold 2-1. Yeah, and I think that they're definitely doing better than they did last generation. But I wanted to just follow up on something Phil Spencer said about supply constraints. He did say that when, and quote, when we get into 2023, you'll start to see more that supply is catching up. You might see an Xbox Series console when you walk into the store. So he's saying when we get into 2023 that they believe that we're going to start seeing more supply catching up to demand. So, yeah. So I do want to move on to something else here, Hamp. So I get to some gaming. Yesterday I tweeted out something that we talked about, Game Logic. And this, it's interesting because I was thinking about my gaming experience on the original Xbox 20 something years ago. And so I tweeted out, gamers should not be bothered if the console they enjoy is in third place in console sold or install base. Like that shouldn't have any impact on whether or not like someone enjoys gaming on that particular console. And like I go back to my experience on the original Xbox, and look, I mean it wasn't in first place. It was a new kid on the block, and I enjoyed it. I mean, heck, even the Xbox One, which we talked about the PlayStation being out, the PlayStation 4 outselling that 2-1. I enjoyed the Xbox One. There were some good games on the Xbox One. And I think that one of the things I seem to think or see happen quite a bit is this need to, I guess, try to, one up the competition. And I'm speaking more on the Xbox side of things. And I'm thinking to myself, like, look, just enjoy the console that you have. That's all that matters. You know, that's it. It doesn't matter if the console's in third place. It doesn't matter if it's in second place. The only thing that matters is that you like it. And I feel like that perspective has kind of got lost in the midst of people interacting on social media. You know, but I think some of that has to do with, what we talked about with earlier the show with, the back alley podcasts who kind of, I think, promote that mindset of we got to win. We got to be better than this, or look what the other console's not doing. Look what we have. And it's just like, if you're thinking like that, are you really enjoying the platform that you game on? Or is it more about clout, So what are your thoughts, Game Logic?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, people should go out and buy the console that, fulfills the requirements and meet their needs. And once you've made that transaction and you've given that company your money, that should kind of be it. Like I've never understood this need to be part of the, unpaid, either the QA workforce for a given publisher. Or the marketing department for a given publisher or platform owner, but people seem to be obsessed with that, and if you go out and you make a purchasing decision and then you spend, I mean, these console generations are 7 years long, so you spend, 7 years trying to make sure that your feelings and your ego feel justified in the $500 choice that you make. That also shows some mental weakness and lack of intestinal fortitude on your part as well. That I guess didn't do your research or didn't determine why you should be satisfied before you spent your money, and you feel you have the need to justify it after the fact. Is something I don't understand. I a lot of times I have. I kind of give them flack for it. I have friends who go out and buy tech stuff. They buy tech stuff without asking me questions beforehand. And in a lot of cases, I've had their wives say, as they're standing in Best Buy, lathering themselves up to buy something, and say, just pick up the phone and call Game Logic and ask him. Right?
Are they lathering themselves up in green soap?
Right, green or blue or whatever. I don't know what Samsung color is. Right, or and then and then if they don't, then they will spend every time I come over yapping at me about like why they're so satisfied with the thing that they bought, and I'm just kind of like, look, man, you didn't talk to me about it before you bought it. Like, if you're happy with the thing, to be happy with it. Like, you don't have anything to prove to me, in how you spent your money. So, and I just see that kind of, extrapolated and exponentially multiplied on social media.
Yeah, and I feel like it tends to happen more with the Xbox community. That's kind of where I see it more, where it's kind of this, this need to be accepted or to have your purchase validated. It's like who, like, as long as you enjoy it, like, who cares? You know?
Yeah, I feel like I see it from both. The differences is, I often see the Xbox community anchoring themselves onto things that are delusional because they're just not fact. But I also often see the PlayStation community anchoring themselves, and you could have an argument about which of those is more dangerous, anchoring themselves to things that are partial facts or notional facts, but extrapolating them to some meaning of significance that I think far outweighs what it actually is. As we've now talked about the infamous spaces that I attended, that they gave a lot of credence to game completion percentage, where I was like, I think sales numbers and I think critical reception matter more to developers and particularly to the business people than game completion percentage. I'm sure game completion percentage matters to someone, but I don't think it is this huge, ginormous center of gravity that holds a lot of sway as an indicator of a given console's success, or projects, how many more people are going to buy a console, right, with any given statistical provenance. So I think all sides engage in it. I think just how they actuate upon it is different for each community from what I see.
Yeah. I think Worry was just in here. I guess he left. All right. I don't know if Worry Word's going to, maybe he joined by accident, but yeah. No, great point, Hamp. Yeah, Worry, I don't know if you're listening, if you were trying to jump in, but if you're in the live chat, just send me a message. No, but you're right. You're right, Game. It does go both ways. It does. But I think for me, like, as I was thinking about too, like, just and I kind of, was picking on the Xbox media here a little bit because, again, I go back to just my experience with the original Xbox, and it was look, it wasn't the top selling console, but it had some really great games that I liked. It did some things very well, and I had fun playing with it. I had fun enjoying the video games, and it was great to see people. Like, I saw some people enjoying Hi-Fi Rush, and I think that was great. So the only issue I have is when people are like, "Oh, Hi-Fi Rush is going to be a Game of the Year contender. It's a banger." I'm like, okay, guys, like, just let the game just stand on its own feet, just do its thing. Let's not put all these aspirations and we're seeing it with Starfield. So anyhow,
yeah,
yeah,
that's a game community problem on Twitter. That's there are accounts that you will see that month after month after month after month, every new game that comes out, oh, this is my GOTY contender. Oh, this is my like, literally, it's a new one every month, and I'm like, why are we even talking about this in January? And I've seen similar energy behind Hogwarts, and I'm just like, it's way too early to be having those conversations.
Yeah, I saw someone saying Game of the Year. It's going to be the Game of the Year, and they were comparing it to Elden Ring. I'm like, okay, let's pump the brakes there a little bit. But I think it's going to be a huge commercial success. But I don't know if I'm ready to give it the Game of the Year, nomination yet.
Right.
But I also haven't played the game yet. But yeah.
And GKN, is it GKN Co?
I think it's GKN Co. I don't know.
Yeah, I will say one thing that you mentioned that I starkly disagree with is Microsoft are doing a good job with how they manage their teams. So that's one perspective that's out there, I think.
Yeah, I don't agree with his perspective that they're good at doing a good job managing teams, considering the examples we have with Halo Infinite, some of the stories coming out of some of the other studios, and I'm not going to get into that again because we've talked about that quite a bit. So, yeah. But Game Logic, it's been an hour since we've been live, and guess what? We're done because I want to go play some video games. I was actually thinking about doing the show earlier this afternoon because it's been a little bit slower at work today or this week. So, but I get a chance to do it. But no. Look, I'm gonna go do some gaming. And we're done. This might be the fastest BRAP show I've ever done on Wednesday night. Outside of a rant, this is probably the fastest BRAP show. An hour. And we hit like 6 or 7 topics, I think. So, look, everyone, thank you again for coming by and hanging out with us. Really appreciate it. Do me a favor, hit the like button. And if you're new, consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. And Game Logic, are you definitely hopping on Call of Duty? What?
Yeah, I'm definitely hopping on Call of Duty.
All right, I will join you for some COD then, sir.
There's probably a pretty big update since season 2 is launching today, and they preloaded it. I want to say yesterday in the early hours of the morning. So you probably got a few gigs of update to get through. So
like how many gigs, man?
I'm not absolutely certain because I wasn't sitting there watching when the update came through because I was on a PC like in the morning and got the update. So I'm not sure how big it was.
All right, let me hold on a sec here. I'm signing on to BattleNet. It's updating now. I don't know. It's not saying what. It's updating. That's all I know. It's just updating right now. I just signed in. It just started updating. By the way, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 is 35% off right now. If you're interested in buying it.
That is one thing I know you're trying to get out of here. One thing we did not talk about tonight is apparently the new outrage and new controversy is because there is a new Call of Duty coming out next year. There are some fans who are outraged and feel that they were duped in buying this year's Call of Duty because they thought it was going to, in air quotes, last 2 years. And there are people signing up a petition to boycott the 2023 Call of Duty. And there are people asking for refunds for their microtransactions because they are going to, again, in air quotes, lose access to their content when the new Call of Duty comes out in 2023. So there'll be a fresh outrage to be discussed on various podcasts as the week goes on.
Gamers are always angry.
That they are.
Always angry about something. Next Level Gaming Podcast is 30 gig. It's a 30 gig update? What? No, that can't be. Hold on a sec here.
That's not unusual. I mean, you're getting the update for multiplayer, Warzone, whether you want it or not. The base, right? So,
well, I have a 6.75 gig update right now that's happening. Is there another update after that?
There might not be. I don't know what components you have installed, so that will.
Oh yeah, I only have Warzone and then multiplayer and then the single player campaign, and that's it.
Yeah, so you may not. I mean, some of that may have had to do with I don't know. Has the zombies mode been dropped for Modern Warfare 2 yet?
I don't know, man. That's a great question. I don't know.
I don't think it's in there yet. So, that may have the rest of that may have to do with components that you don't have installed.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but Game Logic, thank you for jumping on, man. Appreciate your time as always, man. Always great chatting video games with you and talking about the outrage that we seem to see on a weekly basis in the video game community. It always amuses me. I feel like with other. I feel like people who I don't know, man. Do people get out? I don't. Yeah. Anyhow, I'm gonna shut up now because I'll go on and just rant and I'm trying to get some gaming in. So, but no, thank you everyone again for hanging out with us this evening. I appreciate it. Game Logic, you want to let everyone know where they can find you now that you're off Twitter? They can find you on YouTube on Sunday nights.
They can find me over at the Enough to Keep Going Weekly Games podcast on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube. That 2 is the number 2, so E2KG. You can also find me on my blog, roundingoffinfinity.com. where I post my game clips and screenshots and photo modes and a few web links for URLs of stuff that I'm keeping up with, as well as a periodic musing or two. I'm probably sliding into my navel gazing phase, where I will be writing less about, tangible takes on news and more just about kind of my life and lifestyle as a gamer, which is kind of always where I wanted to start vectoring my blog towards in my later years. And I think I'm hitting that stride now. So those things are over there. So you can feel welcome to check them out. And then, of course, the live streams on my channel will start spooling up here back to regular consistency here on my YouTube channel, rounding off infinity. So you could just punch in YouTube/rounding off infinity, and that will take you right there.
Thank you for that, Gabe. I actually appreciate it. Rodimus says, "Oh, he's off Twitter. I thought he blocked me again." No, he is. Rodimus, he is off Twitter. All right, everyone. Thank you again. Hey, enjoy the rest of the evening. Go play some video games. That's what I'm about to do. And we'll catch you next week at a regular scheduled time at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Although I maybe do a BRAP rant this week. Maybe this weekend if I have time. We'll see. But thank you again, everyone. We'll catch you next time.